Would you trade your entire season for a win at Monaco? Would you sign a contract renewal mid-season? Welcome to Tinfoil Helmets, your occasional spicy hot take roundup with all the latest F1 rumors, with the almost believable conspiracy theories to back them up. Everything here has been carefully researched for hours to make sure it is totally founded in logic, truth, and reason. Or not. Who knows? So I see on my show notes, this is the Canada Grand Prix. So Canada. Let's see if we got anything right at the Canada Grand Prix, which I think needs a much more French name given it's in Montreal.
Canada.
Well, you know, something like the made in Canada. You know,
the du fromage. Yeah. Canadian chippy Grand Prix.
Right. Pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. Great.
So some sort of Quebec cruises.
Exactly. It's all about the poutine.
Poutine?
Poutine? Poutine?
Right in with the correct pronunciation of the best Canadian food.
And if you send in an audio clip, we will include it in the episode.
Ooh. Anyway, have we got anything right as we go off the rails even earlier than normal?
Not really.
No.
No, Max was not going to be on the podium.
That was
very conclusively wrong.
That was ambitious at best of a prediction.
His engine blew up, and he had to take a new one due to free practice. It was still possible. This was not as unlikely as you might make out.
Fair enough. The Charles win in like from free practice 1 essentially was just that was gone. Like Ferrari was nowhere this weekend.
They were nowhere except in retirement. Then we also predicted that maybe there would be an incident involving groundhogs causing a retirement of a driver from either the race or qualifying.
I did see a groundhog after one of the safety car restarts. There was one that was trying to cross the track and went, oh, no, this is a bad idea. There's race cars on this track.
Max said that he nearly hit one, but he realized it was an animal, so he had to slow down for it, which shows how much he is a caring, considerate human being. I'm going to give ourselves 0.25 of a point here because there was a live incident with a groundhog, but it survived.
Does that mean, does Max value the life of a groundhog more than the life of a lizard?
Possibly. Did he hit a lizard, or was that Perez?
No, that was just Singapore. I think he avoided Godzilla in Singapore as well, but it was just...
Yeah, but Perez, I think, drove into one of them.
That's not surprising. And Stroll becomes a champion by driving into the Wall of Champions, which he did during qualifying. He did do that.
So did Max, right?
Yeah, there were several people that kissed the wall, so to speak.
Kissed the wall. They kissed the wall and they liked it.
We are now batting 331.
Is that good or bad?
It's not bad. It's still very high up there. But I guess, is there to cover other sporting news of the week, since you are from one of those Commonwealth nations, what's this in cricket terms, given the USA is now a cricketing country since we've beaten Pakistan in the T20 World Championship?
I have no idea because it's cricket, and cricket is like the most boring sport in the world.
How many beers is that in a cricket?
Oh, to get to that level?
Yeah, because if I know one thing about cricket, it's that most of them are drunk all the time.
Not the players, just the fans.
No, from what I hear, the players do.
Okay, interesting.
Granted, most of my cricket knowledge comes from Australia. So
different ethos. Yeah, I don't know. It's cricket. It's very boring, so it's probably bad. So between race drama, did anything happen?
Some stuff happened. Much more. I mean, it's not quite like pre-Australia or what was that?
Pre-season?
No, well the race where it was Miami where like everything happened and we had a sprint race and everything else. So it's not as bad as Miami, but stuff did happen.
Stuff did happen. The greatest driver that exists for selling merch in the Red Bull team got a 2-year renewal. I can't even. But yes.
So I had one thought on Perez's 2-year renewal. I am wondering if they got rid of the clause that says we can't demote you to VCARB.
And that's what convinced him to take the 2-year risk. Well, they convinced them to take the 2-year risk.
That was because they offered 1, he countered with 2, and then you have 2 or 3 bad qualifying performances in a row. So why do you take the 3-year deal on that, or 2-year deal, especially with like Yuki and Daniel right there? So I'm wondering if it's like, sure, we'll take the 2-year deal, but you might be in a VCARB.
I like that theory. Because if I was Perez, I'd be willing to what's the word? Arrogant my way out of that because I believe that obviously I am the best choice for the Red Bull team. I like that. Love it.
It's one of those things. If you're driving well, it's fine. You're going to stay in the Red Bull. But like, if you really wanted the 2-year contract to make sure you are on the grid in 2 years, and to be said, not like jumping too far ahead, I'm not sure I'd want to be locked into a 2026 car at this point in time.
Yes, that is an interesting perspective, and Perez is making a bet on 2 teams that he could be in a car.
But do you know who's not locked into a 2026 car?
Yuki
Tsunoda. So he has plenty of time to go open his restaurant in 2026 and fulfill his life goals.
Yeah. I feel so bad for Yuki because I feel like he has a lot more to give and he just doesn't have the opportunity for it.
Yeah, he has a lot more to give in terms of opening a nice restaurant for us to all go eat at, filled with F1 memorabilia, and I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. And he's just having his nice hobby time right now of driving a Formula One car. Might as well do it while you can because, as we know, there are some teams that won't take you when you are too old.
Indeed. We will talk about that later. I just had one thought on Yuki, though, as you make a point about opening up a restaurant. He can get it a Pirelli-starred restaurant, and then for the race weekends, he can bring a food truck to Suzuka. It'd be amazing.
Yeah, I like the idea of a Pirelli-starred restaurant. That's hilarious.
So should we talk about the 2026 regulations?
After I gave you such a great segue into Merck saying no to science because he was so old.
Okay, I will let. Okay, let's go. Let's do that. We'll come back to the 2026 regs.
Yeah. That was a great segue. Let's.
I'm sorry. Yes, Sainz apparently is too old for Mercedes. Toto was quoted as saying they were focusing on our younger drivers, and that's what we have told Sainz, and that's why we didn't sign him. This would explain why they got rid of Lewis, because he's clearly too old and over the hill.
And definitely why they weren't going to take Fernando Alonso, because he's even older than Lewis.
Exactly. So that's clearly what they're doing. This does raise the question, though. Is there a possibility for an age discrimination lawsuit here?
I don't think that's the case in sport, because you could argue that in a lot of cases.
But what better pure case for an age discrimination? You have performance that is measured every time you go out and do your job. And if you're good, you're good. And if you're bad, you're bad, whether you're young or old.
Well, that doesn't play well into Lewis's hands at this point in time.
Yeah, no comment. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. But, I think my only problem with Merck on this here is they're putting a lot of eggs in the Kimi basket.
Yes.
And I'm not saying Kimi's not the second coming of insert your favorite driver here. But he hasn't, been... Mick Schumacher stormed through F2. Started off a little slow and then really picked it up and won the F2 title, if I remember correctly. Or at least was right there at the end. And he was nowhere in F1.
Exactly.
And granted, I think it was Alex, who he didn't really win F2, but he's been pretty great in F1. But that being said, he was up there contending, Lando, and George, I think all were top 3 that season or something like that.
Right.
So those are 2 good people to be behind.
I also think that there's this risk of pushing people too fast. It's not that they aren't capable, but you gotta just like the tires on an F1 car, you can't push them too hard, you can't push them too little, you need to Goldilocks it. And I just get this vibe that for Kimi, they are possibly pushing a little bit too hard. But I have a theory about how they will solve this.
But in hindsight, you could probably say that Red Bull probably pushed Max a little too hard.
Yes, but I feel like he showed that performance in a lower team first. They didn't just come straight put him in the Red Bull. Admittedly, it was 5 races before they did it. But he showed that capability on track.
And then he won that first race in the Red Bull.
Only because Lewis and Nico had a tiff.
Yeah, but if the Mercedes could take each other out every race, I would love it. Just because that is still one of the funniest moments in Formula One for me is Nico and Lewis taking each other out on lap 1. I love Spain 2016 so much because of that. I can watch that highlight again and again. It never gets old. Yeah, but even then, Max had raw pace from the gun. I'm not denying that, but it was his racecraft that was really lacking. And it wasn't that long ago, if we really think about it, that we were all referring to him as Crash Stappen.
Yep.
And he was very much going under the win crash DQ mindset of he's either going to win this race, he's going to crash out, or he's probably going to get himself disqualified somewhere along the way. And that's why Ricardo had the upper hand on him for a couple of years. And then once Max kind of settle down and settle into the team, 2018, like probably I think mid-season 2018 is really when it started to happen. But like, man, by 2019, he was getting to be the Terminator Max we know, of just like driving the wheels off that car.
I mean, maybe that's Merck's perspective though, right? Like, we're all like, we're supposing that you have to put somebody in that second seat who is instantaneously amazingly competitive. And maybe
Fair.
that's actually not their goal, per your point about the Max Verstappen arc, is they're like, he has it and he just needs time, and we're going to sign him on like, you know, an implicit 5-year contract, and it'll turn that George Russell into the next Danny Rick, and it'll be great.
Does this prove that Mercedes thinks they mismanaged George Russell in the Williams and stuck with Valtteri too long?
I don't know. I still think that Valtteri Bottas was the greatest thing that could happen to Mercedes in that era.
Speaking of between race drama, Valtteri Bottas won the 100-mile unbound gravel race in his age group, 30-34. No, he was second in 30-34. Or 30-39, whatever it is.
Continuing his story arc into becoming a world-class elite cyclist.
Sure. I think he's a damn good gravel racer. Let's not go so far as to call him a world-class elite cyclist.
In the gravel, though, number 2 seems that's world-class.
Number 2 in his age group in the half-distance race.
Sure. It's world-class.
Sure.
I'm the world-class Dominic.
We'll leave that one for another day. Yeah, we'll have to. I'll have to tune into our other cycling or our other podcast, which will soon cover the Tour de France and other gravel racing.
But to continue on the discussion of science, or close out the discussion on science, supposedly he had roomed for Williams, but he hadn't signed for Williams because he says he hasn't signed anything, and it's all just lies. And you have to remember that everybody said he'd already signed for Aston Martin, and then they said that he'd signed for Merck, and then they said that he was going to sign for Red Bull, and it's all wrong. So we'll see what happens.
Well, leading into kind of Williams, I think we have Alex confirmed for Williams, right? Because he was off petting stingrays and then signed his contract. And then now we have Valtteri and Carlos talking about going to the Williams. I'm thinking Adrian Newey to Williams is not that far-fetched of a thing at this point in time.
I don't think that you as a driver would sign in that context, and maybe that's why Carlos hasn't signed yet. But it feels so tenuous to be like, we think we've got Newey, and I feel like Newey is the kind of slippery fish that he will change his mind and you suddenly don't have him, and now you're in a terrible car. I think people are more willing to sign up for Williams because they believe in the project. Like, they've gone and had the conversation, and the people there, like, they've got, what's his name, Pat Fry now?
Yeah.
And, like, all the good people, and, like, there is potential here, and I think that being part of that arc, if I'm going to have to pick from, you know, the bottom of the barrel teams, Williams feels like the one that's actually committed to doing this. It's certainly not Haas. It's definitely not Alpine. And it's not going to be VCarb either, because that's Red Bull.
Yeah, the only thing that makes me think, like, Newey to Williams is plausible is because I think, like, what's the one thing, like, there's two reasons if I'm Newey, I go there. One is they give me an ownership stake in the team, which is something I've wanted for years, and he wasn't going to get at Red Bull. And then two is, how much do you want to cement your legacy by going back to the team that you, like, brought to the prominence in the 90s, having an ownership stake in the team, and then essentially, to kind of segue into the 2026 regs, rebuilding a 1990s F1 car, but with active aero and, you know, profit.
I will absolutely agree that the team that is most likely to succeed in pulling Adrian Newey for a long-term meaningful contract, e.g. more than 2 years, is Williams. I don't think it's Aston Martin, because I don't think Adrian Newey wants anything to do with that. I think Ferrari is number 2, and I think the only reason he wants to go to number 2 is because I think he knows that if he gives those two drivers a good car, they will make the best of it. And I think that's the only question about both, I would say, arguably Carlos and Alex, is you don't know if you give them a great car, whether they will nail it to the wall or whether they'll, like, bottle it at the last moment.
So the one thing I would, again, if I'm Adrian thinking about Williams, I think the one thing Williams has is an ownership stake. Is we know from kind of some of the stuff that's come out with Red Bull recently that Adrian Newey likes the mentorship. So you can almost think of Adrian like a non-racing Niki Lauda at Mercedes cool, let's say he only wants to design F1 cars for like another 2 or 3 more years, but then he's still an ownership stake, and maybe he's whispering into the ears of some of the aerodynamicists around Williams of like, hey, what if you did it this way? Hey, here, I just happened to draw a diffuser on this napkin. Go take a look at it. Tell me what you think. Like, you know, it's one of those where I think he could still be involved in Formula One, and maybe not to the level that he has been by having that ownership stake in Williams, if that's something they're willing to do for him.
I think I would agree with that. But the real question there, though, is Does he want to design a 2026 car with flappy motorized bits that make fucking wing patterns and wave around in the wind because it's Thursday?
I was going to think, didn't Williams have some sort of crazy technological advantage in the early 90s? And I think it was traction control, not active.
It was traction control. Active suspension is what they
That's what active suspension.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm saying he's already designed a car with active something.
And so he'd be willing to do it for these crazy regulations?
Yeah. And kind of going into the crazy regulations, like, I do think, like, I kind of hate it a little bit, just from the standpoint of, like, when they launched the 2020, I guess 2021 regs is what they were supposed to be, but they ended up being 2022. Like, this car looks so, like, futuristic and cool and awesome, and it's going to have ground effect and everything else. And this car seems like, hey, remember all those cars that looked good in the 80s and 90s that y'all love? We've brought it back, but with a little bit of modern flair.
Yeah, these cars look very, I don't want to say strange, but it's a bit of a chimera, and not in a good way, right? Like, supposedly it's got no more ground effects or greatly minimized ground effects. What have we spent the last 3 years doing? This is ridiculous. Supposedly it's got these fancy up and downy front flaps and back flaps that move that apparently the driver does have control of, but wait a minute, the driver doesn't have control over, but it does this thing and it makes it slippery, but not slippery. It's very confusing. It's got a silly overtake, but
the high downforce and low downforce settings, the Z and X mode.
The Z mode and X mode. X mode is specifically for the Las Vegas Strip.
Wouldn't it be red mode and black mode?
That'd be for the casino. I was thinking about the strip clubs.
Oh, okay. I don't think there's strip clubs on the Strip.
Why is it called the Strip then? The Las Vegas Strip is called the Strip because it refers to a specific stretch of South Las Vegas Boulevard that has been densely packed with hotels, casinos, and entertainment venues.
Well, it's not called the Strip because of strip clubs.
The other thing about the not Las Vegas regs.
The 2026 regs?
The 2026 Formula One FIA regulations is that apparently 2 teams have threatened to walk because they basically got surprised by this. Apparently they only found out the same time as everybody else and had, in earlier revisions of these regulations, expressed concern.
This is great news for Andretti, who's been told by multiple sources of you should just buy your way into the sport that nobody wants to sell you them your team to.
That Greg Meffy, who now runs Liberty Media and is the ex-Microsoft CFO, fun fact of the day, he says you need about $1 billion to buy a team. So what he needs to do is get $2 billion and buy 2 teams and have Andretti Senior and Andretti Junior.
No, it's got to be Mario and Michael.
Mario and Michael, okay, that's the 2 teams.
Yeah.
On a slight tangent, having been rewatching my things, Michael Andretti was a terrible F1 driver.
Yes, he was.
He was truly awful, which makes me wonder, is the reason that the F1 and FIA and the other teams don't want to let him in is he's like, if he's going to be that bad, we don't want him.
In his very, very slight defense, because I will admit he was a bad F1 driver who could never get used to the standing start, he was teammates with Ayrton Senna.
I understand that, but even Ayrton Senna had a bad season that year, and Andretti is way worse. I think for the first 5 races, he crashed off on the first lap.
This just sounds like us talking today about Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez.
It does. Shall we move on from between waist drama, and shall we move on to does Blank still have a job?
I mean, I don't think we finished talking about the 2026 regs.
Okay. No, we didn't. Okay.
Barely faster than an F2 car?
Yes, that's the rumor that one of the teams came out and said it's going to be barely faster than a Formula 2 car.
To be fair, I do like the idea of the push-to-pass system over DRS. I think IndyCar's push-to-pass system is amazing. I like the concept of, because you get 90 seconds in IndyCar, and it's your choice on how you want to use it throughout the race. So, maybe, hey, you're trying to do a couple fast laps to catch up to the person in front of you for then you can slipstream and go by them. Maybe you want to use it defensively. Maybe you want to use it offensively. I think that's great. I think that's a great, like, something that's gimmicky but not too gimmicky. Like, DRS can be a bit gimmicky sometimes because, like, imagine you had somebody who, like, burned through their push to pass within, like, the first half of the race, and then it's gone. And then I thought another way to do it, if you wanted not to just, like, straight up copy IndyCar and tee off something we talked about last week, is you get like 30 seconds a stint. So every time you put on, like, you change your tires, like, you refresh your push to pass. So, like, sure, you can pit again and we'll give you more push to pass.
The problem with this, it's pretty fundamental, is your suggestion is based on logic. And the thing is the F1 company is not based on logic. And so what they will do is they will have fan votes going on throughout the race, which they will steal from Formula E, and they will allow you to vote for who gets additional boost. And that will be the defining feature of the 2026 final race, where it'll be going down to the wire. It's going to be hilarious, and it's going to be bad.
Can we all just agree to give it to like Lance Stroll or somebody who won't take like good effect from it, or will who use it to just drive into a wall and we'll laugh about it?
Yes, there we go. That'll give us the excitement we're looking for.
Yeah, because see, like I at least like the Formula E thing of you go offline to like activate the boost sort of thing, because it's like, okay, you have to compromise your run to get a better run. Like, okay, I like that, but like the fan vote was dumb, and I don't think that would go over well in Formula One.
No, it will be sandbagged, but you know somebody in FOM will get that either over the line so that it happens at least for one season, or get so close that we'll be like, oh God, what's about to happen?
And I think the other thing they said is they attracted like 6 different engine manufacturers. Was that the number?
You've got Honda, you've got Ford, you've got Merck, you've got Renault, and you've got Ferrari, and
Audi?
Oh yeah, Audi. There you go. There's your 6.
And then GM's willing to come in as well, so we can really go up to 7.
Yeah.
And then going back to Adrian Newey news, if you're looking at Adrian Newey speculation, if you're looking at these regulations, are you excited?
No.
Because I know in 2014 he was like, this is crap, this is just an engine formula, I don't really want to design a Formula 1 car around this.
And that's what everybody's saying. Everybody's saying that this will be defined by the engine.
Yeah, this will be an engine formula.
Yeah.
So in that case, does Newey even go anywhere?
I think that is actually the most likely outcome for Adrian Newey.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, what team, was it a bad time to lose your Adrian Newey if you were, say, Red Bull, looking at these engine regs? And yeah. And again, great time for Williams to pick up Adrian Newey.
Well, the rumor for Red Bull is their engine is not working well. Like, their on-the-bench engine is well behind everybody else in terms of its arc, in terms of its development arc, and its performance. Like, I know it's George, but you've heard it from some other people who are like, the Merc engine's really good. And so it would not surprise me if Newey was like, oh, this is just, why am I doing this? I'm going to be in engine hell again.
I'm going to give everybody a pass on what their engine currently is in mid-2024.
Yes.
Like, yeah, it might be crap, but if you're able to make it better in... Like honestly, at this point in time, I'd rather have a running crap engine than a running good engine, because at least if I have a running crap engine with the unlimited budget I can pour into engines right now, especially on a team like Red Bull who's been like leading the constructors championship, like, okay, this is fine. We can't spend as much money or time on the car because limited by CFD and wind tunnel time. Great, go build the engine. Go make the engine better. Like, sure, let it be crap. Let's fix it. Like, everything else.
But I think the problem with engines is it's not that there's an unlock, right? The thing that's so interesting about aerodynamics that happens is it's right on the bubble of really understanding it. And I get the impression that engines as a mechanical thing have 200 years of people understanding how things kind of work, and it's a bit more predictable.
Yeah, but in that case, then why would you be so far behind on the engine to begin with if it was very predictable? It's like, oh, we just do X, Y, and Z, and we have a fast engine.
Yeah, fair point.
And just as a side note, air does move through engines, so aerodynamics does matter.
It does. Should we talk out the last bit of between race drama?
Yeah, I think we have to.
Jacques Villeneuve, he's always spicy. Villeneuve, he had some very nice things to say. He provided constructive criticism and provided a framework within which some drivers could learn to do something better with their skills.
Yeah, the crazy thing to me about Villeneuve's comments was what I'm looking at it right now. It's, why is he still in Formula One? Referring to Daniel Ricciardo, he has had the same problem for 5 years. There is no reason to keep making excuses. I think his image rather than his results have kept him in Formula One. And it's like, sure, now do Lance, now do Kevin Magnussen, now do Nico Hulkenberg, now do Esteban Ocon. Like, if you want to talk about a 5-year period of like not improving as a driver, well, there are many more fingers we can point at than just Daniel Rick.
And he went on and did Lance Stroll too. I can't remember what he said about him. Stroll's kind of forgettable, but he said something. The thing that I think this makes that's kind of semi-newsworthy about it is I feel like Jacques Villeneuve kind of said the thing out loud that most people don't really want to say out loud. And while I agree with there's a lot of other drivers who probably also shouldn't be in F1, Danny seems to be holding on because of what he was, not what he could be, right? It's like he's had enough opportunities to prove he is what he could be, and he just isn't. And
he is starting to get it back a little bit, though. I mean, he qualified well.
We should save that because I have theories. I have theories about why this was an interesting qualification.
And meanwhile, Lance Stroll still can't out-qualify Fernando Alonso.
Indeed. Shall we see if anybody has any jobs?
Well, Esteban Ocon doesn't have a job anymore.
No, he got fired.
But I think he's lucky he still has a job for this weekend
Yes.
from what everybody was saying.
Yeah, it seems pretty bad, and it does not shock me that they did not renew his contract. It surprises me that it happened so quickly immediately after Monaco, despite denials from everybody involved that it was anything to do with that. I feel like it was on the bubble, and both sides weren't really into it, and this just made it much easier for Alpine to be like, peace!
The best bit was on the official Formula One social media Instagram post of, Esteban Ocon will not be, is parting ways with Alpine at the end of the season. That was liked by Pierre Gasly.
Perfect. Beautiful. I have a very spicy take related to Esteban Ocon and his now challenge of finding a seat. I don't think anybody wants to sign him.
I was going to say, which WEC team is he going to end up at? Or will he enjoy IndyCar?
Yeah, but I have a theory.
That was some between race drama we didn't talk about. Newgarden made a comment, I believe on the Pat McAfee show, that everybody in the IndyCar field could do a good job in an F1 car.
History would suggest otherwise, Mr. Newgarden. History would suggest otherwise.
I don't think he's wrong that I think some people in the IndyCar field could do very well in F1, including himself.
Yes.
But you look at
the whole field?
Well, I'm also thinking of, you look at Roman Grosjean and Marcus Ericsson, who were kind of nowhere in F1, being IndyCar race winners. Sure.
Suspicious.
I'm not saying that, Newgarden couldn't do a good job. Will Power was king of the street tracks for a while. He might be, back in his prime, he could probably do a good job. But yeah, everybody, I don't know about that.
And statistically speaking, that's just not the way. I don't understand why that's the case, but statistically speaking, that if you're an IndyCar driver, it doesn't work. I think there are more people who've gone from F1 to IndyCar and had success, such as Nigel Mansell, who is one of the few people to be F1 champion and IndyCar champion. Technically kart, but it's the same thing at the end of the day.
You know who else has a kart title and a Formula One title?
Jacques Villeneuve.
Jacques Villeneuve.
Yes.
Yeah. In fact, that's what got him into F1 was his kart title.
And Mario Andretti is the other one.
Yes, Mario. Yeah, but he's never won Indy.
He's never won an IndyCar championship?
No, he's never won the Indianapolis 500.
Oh, that's the one he's missing. Who cares about that?
Yeah, because there's the Andretti curse at Indy.
Yes. So anyway, let's return back to Mr. Ocon. My spicy take is no other team wants him, but he will do anything to stay in F1 because he talks about the emotional torture, which I understand and accept that would emotionally torture me when he got kicked out of F1 back in the day and how he made a great comeback. I think Mercedes is going to sign him on a 1-year contract because they'll be like, do you want 1 year? And he'll be like, oh God, please let me get in a car, please. Please, I don't want to be out of F1. And they will go have him keep the seat warm for Kimi while they either find another seat for Kimi or let Kimi stew just a little bit more to improve his skills. And Ocon will be so happy and then he'll think, if I can do well in the muck, which he won't against George, then he can be out in the next year, but he'll think he'll maybe save it in the year after. That's my spicy take.
I would love an F1 failures WEC team of Esteban Ocon, Lance Stroll,
Mick Schumacher.
Sure. That seems like a good WEC team right there.
I think it'd be great.
Yeah.
It'd be wonderful. Wait, based on that, does that mean that Fernando Alonso is a failure because he went to a WEC team?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
the spiciest take this week, and I don't necessarily disagree.
I mean, if we want to, we should be talking about Canada, not F1 history. Yes. But, there are several championships that dude probably should have won, including maybe 2007 and 2007 at McLaren and 2012 at Ferrari. He should maybe be a 4 or 5 time F1 champion if he is as good as everybody says he is.
And yet, should we talk on to our next candidate about whether they still have a job or not? Maybe
Danny
we've
Rick?
talked about him. Danny Rick. The thing that makes me feel like this is his continues inclusion here is the way to this week after Perez got signed and then the media interviews and the ramp up to Canada, he was like, I know I haven't had my best performance, but I still think I have a shot at the Red Bull seat. And it's like, how much hopium are you smoking?
That leads credence to what we talked about of Perez. That line got removed from Perez's contract.
You are correct, and I don't like to admit that in this specific case. It makes so much sense. So much sense. But then this weekend he went and out-qualified Yuki, so what's going on there then? But speaking of Perez, and I know we've talked a lot about Perez.
Well, hold on. If you are Danny Rick, do you hire Jacques Villeneuve to just come with you to every remaining race and give you a pep talk beforehand?
Yes. Yes. So to fast forward ever so slightly into quali and then immediately reverse back up, Perez was knocked out in Q1. In P, what was it, 16, 17?
16. He was right
16,
there.
P16.
He almost made it in a car that was also P2 in the same session. It was P1 and it was a half second clear of everybody.
Exactly. This is just so ridiculous for Perez. Like, he signs a 2-year contract, and it's like it was a terrible performance. It was awful. He has no excuse. It wasn't raining. It wasn't suspicious weather. You had Max was right there and nailing it at the top, and just no excuse.
Well, this is the contract extension curse, right? Every time somebody signs a contract extension, their next race is terrible. I mean, his other previous 2 races were also terrible, but
exactly.
Wait, you sent me something. Isn't this actually a better qualifying than his last 2 races, so he's not even holding to the trend?
No, it's even worse. He's not going up. It's so bad. Just to refresh, he was out.
It was 11th, 17th, and 16th. So he was better today than he was in Monaco.
Yeah, he has been out qualified by Danny today, Logan Sargent.
Well, both V carbs.
Two times in a row, but no, I've got the second V carb coming, and Yuki 3 times in a row. Like, this is ridiculous. The only other theory I have, right, based on the internet rumor that Perez sold a lot of merch and therefore he's good, is that they got him to do a 2-year extension. They agreed to a 2-year extension because they're paying him basically nothing, like just enough to like cover his property taxes. And he's getting cost of travel paid for. And then they have said to him, for every point you score, we'll give you $5,000. Right? And when you do the math on 275 points in the season, that starts to be like it's $1.5 million. Maybe that's pretty good, right? And they're doing this because it makes it cheap and he brings in the money on the merch. And so they're willing to accept because they know Max will nail it for them, get them the Constructors' Championship, and Perez will make the money for them in this time of the cost cap. It's the only theory I can come up with because otherwise, why would you sign this man?
You don't trust Yuki in the Red Bull, you don't trust Danny in the Red Bull, and you have no other prospects? But at this point, why would you not trust Yuki or Danny in the Red Bull?
Just roll your dice on them. Give them 2 races and then tell them, right? Like, that gets you a little bit. You've got 3 drivers. You give Danny 3 races, you give Liam 3 races, and you give Yuki 3 races.
Oh, I forgot about Liam. Yeah, throw Liam in there as well.
Exactly. That'll get you basically to the end of the season. You'll have worked out which one you want to keep until the end of the season, and it's fine. And you can pay them peanuts too, and you don't have to deal with Perez embarrassing you, being someone that you have just signed 2 years contract. It's ridiculous.
You know, the crazy thing is I could very well see Red Bull, Max still winning the drivers this year, but Red Bull not winning the constructors because
of Perez.
In part because of Perez, but also like looking at the recent results from like the last couple of races and maybe going forward, it seems like Max is somewhat there. Then it's either McLaren, Mercedes, or Ferrari. And then in some other race, that car that was right there the previous round isn't right there. So I think Max is still going to win this championship, but it's going to just be because he's consistent and not because he's blowing the doors off everybody.
Right. I agree with that. Shall we move on to qualification recap?
It was a tease of rain. I was really annoyed.
Yeah, it was a bit of a tease.
80% chance, and we got some drops.
We sure that wasn't sweat?
I mean, I always love the video of grandstands all hurriedly trying to put on ponchos.
Yeah, at that point I thought we had the rain. I thought it was a lock-in. But no, that's not what we got. It does appear that Stroll loves the wall. He touched it for the very first time.
Well, he almost touched it the very first time, and then he really touched it the second time.
Then he definitely touched it the very first time.
Apparently, they've moved the wall back over the years.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that. That was kind of confusing to me. What was interesting is every time somebody smacked that wall, it sparked, and I'm like convinced this is another example of how the wheels this year are not good. Max apparently traded his car in for a tractor.
Oh, you don't think the Red Bull had performance? I thought it was pretty good today.
I think it was okay, but only because Max did a Max.
That's fair enough.
He had to try really hard to get that to do the lap that it did.
I think he was a little off on like tire strategy because he was on some used tires at some point in times where other people weren't. And I think specifically in like Q3, because if you think to Q3, I know George and Lewis apparently, I think, were they on new tires or used tires for their first?
They were on used at first, and then they went out on new.
Right, everybody was on used first, but it seemed like Max's maybe were more used, or he really was just trying to do a banker, because the conditions got worse for the final run, and Max was the only one to improve on new tires. So,
but it's Max.
It is, but if you put Max on new tires straight out of the gate, I think he has pole today.
Possibly, yes, because he'd have got it first.
Well, no, because I think he would have been in the 111s in the better conditions.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
Fair. I will concede that point. But yeah, it does still feel like the Red Bull's not working perfect. The monkey paw has struck again. The Ferrari team took the monkey paw and they said, please let us win Monaco. And it said, so it did. And it said, but now I have to take back. And they were both out in Q2. And it wasn't even like they were like just out in Q2. It felt like they really had to try hard to make it into Q2.
Make it to 11th and 12th.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
I will say, I think, however, if you would have asked Charles, like, would you trade the whole season for winning Monaco? He would have said yes, absolutely. And sometimes you make that deal.
Yep, I probably would have made the same deal too. So I thought it was amusing that we got equal time for P1. I thought that was funny. Second time it's happened since we added 1,000th. Previous time being Schumacher, Villeneuve, who we've already discussed, and a person I've now forgotten. Oh, Heitz-Hound-Frenchen.
Yes, but can you name the track where it happened?
It was Barcelona.
Nope.
Oh no, it was the European Grand Prix, which Nürburgring?
Jerez.
Oh, Jerez. Okay, that's
like
the European Grand Prix doesn't actually stay in the same place, and I think that's a cheat.
You mean like going to Azerbaijan?
Yes, and it was in Brands Hatch, and then it was in
which, as we all know, the UK is no longer part of Europe.
What wasn't that? It's complicated. What else?
You want to talk about Lewis? Yeah.
Yeah. What? He was doing really good. I thought he was ramping up, and I'm like, he's winding up. He's getting ready for his, final lap in Q3, and he's going to show how I made. And then he was 3 tenths off, and it was
he was down in
ridiculous.
7th.
I know what should he be in? Does he still have a job? I don't know. I was disappointed in that.
I mean, well, technically, he doesn't have a job with Merck anymore.
Yeah, true. That's why they fired him, because he's crap. I have a theory about why this qualifying was all a bit kinds of a mixed up and crazy turmoil thing.
Was it because the rain washed all the rubber off the track before the start of the first qualifying session?
No.
And then there was a constant moving of weather throughout the area that caused the wind to be very variable and changing and gusty?
No.
Okay, well, those are my theories.
Okay. My theory is that this track is causing challenges for cars to warm their tyres up. And the cars that didn't do well are known to have problems warming their tyres up. Like Red Bull, they have a problem with that. Ferrari have a problem with that. And actually the people that did well were the people who normally eat their tyres. The Mercedes haven't been good with their tyres. The V-Carbs haven't been good with their tyres. The only one that was kind of in the middle, kind of doing the right thing, seeming sensible, is McLaren, which makes me wonder if actually McLaren have the most consistent car.
Well, was Oscar ahead of Lando?
No.
Okay. Because if so,
was P3.
Because that's right. Because that leads more to your eating tires theory. Because Oscar eats his tires more than Lando.
Yeah, thank you.
Actually, I do like this because Aston Martin's back, kind of more where they have been. That's a tire eating team.
Yes.
I guess this is good news for Ferrari as they fix their tire munching problems.
Indeed, and it's done them no good whatsoever because Ferrari don't have luck; they just have a monkey paw.
This was apparently they did resurface the track between the 2023 and 2024 Grand Prix.
And some of the camera angles, they look real weird. Like you're like, is that track wet? But I think it was just the way the surface was, shining in. So I think that just all lends into it was a tire problem. And Max, to a certain extent, spoke about that.
Should we move on to the race?
We shall move on to the race.
What a great segue! That totally doesn't look like we've done this over 2 separate days.
No, not at all. In any way possible. I would like to make out that this is clearly the most amazing Haas strategy in the world, and it was going to be truly fantastic. And they were going to make a win because look how fast they were going. It's just inspired. It's just like, look at Haas. Oh wait, hang on a minute. They had to pit stop because the track dried out. And what were people thinking? And why do we need to stir the commentary so much? We've got so much going on anyways. Why do we need this?
Like everything Haas, it was a desperate move that didn't work out.
Indeed. That's what Gene Haas says every time he tries to get them to spend more money.
However, I just want to say, like, at the top, I think the Canada track is wonderful. I think it's an amazingly cool-looking venue. As far as, like, tracks I can visit in North America, it's probably number one on my list of, like, races I would love to go to.
It's in an interesting place, like both in the track and in the city, and it's the history of the city. It's all interesting, and they sound like they're speaking a foreign language because they like French. It's got the funny little dome thing. The track is exciting because it's got walls, but it's also got bit that aren't walls. It's got everything.
It's got some twisty bits followed by a really long straight bit,
and it's got cute groundhogs.
It does. It's got a spot where they did the crew racing in the Olympics.
Exactly, it's wonderful, it's exciting, and I'm glad that it's still on there.
I think it generally produces a pretty good race.
It does. There was a number of references to previously exciting races. Lewis's first win, Button with his 7 pit stops that got him the win in the wet weather.
And brought us the 3-hour time limit rule.
Exactly. It's very exciting.
Yeah. So. But overall, I just want to show a little appreciation to the Canadian circuit. And also, because of the time of the year it is in the calendar and where it's located, it can lead to some interesting weather like this weekend.
Yeah. It's the most exciting race on the calendar that begins with the letters MON.
Is there anyone other than Montreal and Monaco?
Monaco and Monza.
Ooh, okay, that's a little spicy.
So, there you go.
I thought we were going to super qualify this. It's like it's the best race of the season above this latitude.
No, it begins with MON. We won't moan about it, though. But Ricciardo might, because he got a 5-second penalty for jumping the start. It was clear. It was so crisply clear that he was just streaking down the road so fast that it was worthy of giving him a penalty. He wasn't.
I mean, it was so clear. The FIA document's rather interesting to read. I was looking at it right before we started recording, and it's something along the lines of, like, as I'm pulling it back up, yeah, you moved after the 4-second light was illuminated before the start signal was given. This is a breach. However, the movement was very slight and no significant sporting advantage was gained. Therefore, we are going to impose the least significant penalty we can.
This is Lando Norris's fault.
I mean, what isn't?
True, but this is very explicitly Lando Norris's fault. It's because he jump-started. Actually, no, wait, this is Sergio Perez's fault, I think. Because not Lando jump-started in Jeddah, but stopped before he went over the line, and Perez and Red Bull were like, oh, we can't possibly have this, it's unacceptable. So they changed the regs, and now they use it that any motion prior to the green light is considered bad.
I'm kind of okay with that still.
I think so. I think it's fine. I think it should encourage people to behave appropriately.
But I guess the question is, like, what is going to be an egregious false start that isn't a 5-second penalty? Or is it all just going to be like this if you stop and start again?
I think what's going to happen is it's going to be 5 seconds if you stop before you're exited your pit box. So if you do the blah, 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 blah thing, you'll get 5 seconds. I think if you go blah, 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 over the line, then you're going to get in trouble.
Fair enough.
10 or even drive-through. Do we have drive-through penalties anymore? We should bring back drive-through penalties. I thought drive-through penalties were good.
I think Ocon's gotten one.
What hasn't Ocon got?
A
contract for next year.
So funny. Yeah.
What else did we have? I think this was to pile onto your this race was a good race. I was surprised that this race felt like it should have depended on pit strategy, but actually in hindsight, I don't think the pit strategy really made any difference to anybody.
I have some slight disagreements because I'm really surprised that nobody chucked it on some dry tires kind of in that 10 laps before rain, like lap 20 to 28 or something like that, especially given that there was then the free stop with the safety car. Like that could have been really interesting if somebody pumped in like a bunch of really fast laps and then got to put on inners with the safety car.
I think the problem is that the likeliness of a safety car was so unpredictable relative to the timing of the rain that if you had gone and done that and you had just like torn out and done like an amazing job to get back above where you had been, you would lose that advantage so quickly as soon as you had to switch back the other way. And that's why everybody was just kind of waiting, and it like just didn't feel quite right.
Yeah, I think it's very important that Williams bring Nicholas Latifi in to coach Logan Sargent about when to cause a safety car.
Yes, this is clearly perfect. He's learning from the best of the best.
Right. Oh, man, do we want to even mention Logan? Like, he hit the wall twice.
No, he did. He kissed the barrier. It wasn't really the wall.
Fair.
So not really twice. Let's not rag on Logan Sargent because we've got people such as Sergio Perez we'd like to talk about instead.
I think we can rag on both of them equally well.
True. True. But before we rag on them, I would like to say that his teammate pulled before he was unceremoniously dropped out of the race by a incoherent Carlos Sainz, did an amazing overtake on Ocon and Ricciardo. It was like perfect. He came out of the penultimate last corner, that big hairpin, and was shooting down the track, and he got up beside Ricciardo, and then he just kept in this smooth move between him and Ocon. It was beautiful. That man needs a better car.
That was after the first safety car restart, I think.
I think it was before, actually, because it was still quite wet.
Jeez, I just watched this race and I can't even remember what happened. But either way, I think even at the start, like, George got away pretty cleanly, and then, he did fine.
He did all right. I think everybody was playing it very safe.
Yeah, because Max then started to close in on him, and then once the safety car happened, I was surprised. Lando got all the way up to first before the safety car.
Yeah.
And then
legitimate overtakes.
Right, before Logan hit the wall and was kind of stranded. And then so I thought it was very interesting that they were blaming him blaming the safety car a little bit on the commentary for picking up Lando early. But if I recall, in Miami, the safety car picked up Max instead of Lando, which kind of like allowed Lando to extend his delta to be able to, and like kind of ruin Max's chance at the pit stop. So I think it's, you can lament all about like not only is it the shoulda, woulda, couldas or what ifs of, when the safety car comes out versus what did you do, but Miami could look very differently if the safety car picks up Lando instead of Max.
Exactly. I don't think the safety car decided this race. I think the drivers decided this race.
No, I thought it was very interesting that as the track was drying, the McLarens, going into the first safety car with that drying track, the McLaren seemed the fastest car. But then the second time we ended up on a drying track, they really weren't.
So my theory is that the drivers held back on their tyres. Like, they let the gap grow to save the tyres, to let them have that opportunity when it dried out. And I think that was very intentional. But that second time through, there wasn't that same opportunity in that same window to be able to, like, let's hang back a little bit. And therefore they were asked to push. And so there was a more equalization that happened in the field.
There wasn't 20 laps of almost, or of kind of punishing the inters. It was all like a very quick 15-lap inter session overall.
Exactly.
That's fair.
I will say, I think the top five are very closely matched.
Yeah, they were pretty good. I think this is definitely a case of George can't handle the pressure once again. If we feel like ragging on George,
yeah, he gets so het up where he thinks the opportunity for success is significantly greater than it really is. And I know he was on pole, and I know he kind of kept it out front, but there was this undertone through the rest of the races, like, the win is mine, and you're like, no, George. And he does this every race. They're like in P12, and he's like, I think I can get a win out of this. By doing what, George? What are you going to do?
Yeah, but I think this was the case, the race where he definitely had the best case of getting the win. And, he goes from first to third in the pit straight because, Lando comes charging through. He overcooks it through the chicane, and then Max comes through as well. So, like, in the span of not even one sector of the lap, he's gone from first to third because... we talk about him overcooking the tires. He's definitely somebody who I feel overdrives. Similar to how early in the podcast we talked about, like, when Max came on the scene, he was very, we jokingly call it crash tapping. He pushed really hard. And then it was finally when I think he chilled out that Max got even faster. And I don't think George has learned how to chill out.
No, and he's probably spent the 3 years in Williams having constantly to overdrive the car. And he needs to, to a certain extent, unlearn that to give himself more opportunity for success.
Well, I'd say he's constantly overdriving the Merc as well. Like,
I agree, but like he needs to learn not to. But he had no choice in the Williams.
Yeah, well, I think he's also had no choice in the Merc, given how like crap it's been over the last couple seasons. Like, yeah, if you really want to go for it, like it's hard. But he's not helping his case by when he does put himself in these positions. Like, watching qualifying, it's like, oh shit, George put it on pole, but Max is right there and Lando's right there. I know how this is going to shake out. And hey, guess what? It's exactly how it shook out.
Should talk about Ferrari?
I mean, I don't think Ferrari wants to talk about Ferrari.
I don't think they want to talk about it. I felt pretty bad for them, but I will say the positive I took away from it is I thought that Brian, the new engineer, was actually really good. I thought he was pretty communicative. I don't know whether it's because they've chosen the best clips, but he sounds like he's actually communicating with George. And not once did we hear we're checking. Like, he immediately came back with information and details about what was wrong with his car. I thought that was great.
How much time are we losing? A lot. Tell me how much time we're losing. Half a second.
Yeah, it's like, I get why he was trying to manage Charles. I get it, but we'll see how that plays out. But we haven't heard a we are checking for 3 weeks now. This is ridiculous. We need a new meme.
It's almost like Ferrari's trying to win races now.
Who would have thought?
Kind of.
But they still have the nickname of Scuderia Ferrari, so it's all right.
Oh, man. They had some bold strategy calls today that was...
And I was all for it. I was like, give it a shot, see what happens. And they did it, and I hope that they own that. And I think that's a very important part of this process.
I think it was fair to give it a shot. I definitely think allowing Charles to like pit and reset the car to get the engine mode back to normal was a great call. The hards, maybe not. Maybe that was a bit ambitious.
Yeah, but got to try it. But Sainz proven that maybe he shouldn't have a seat in F1 because he's dropped it and did a terrible job and took out somebody else. So if he dilly-dallied for much longer, he will be out of F1.
Yeah. The Stroll crash, or not Stroll.
No. I know
the Sainz crash.
But...
Yeah. The Sainz crash was pretty tough, and I think it's just one of those. It's a variable condition race, and sometimes even the best drivers get caught out. I mean, we like to talk how good Max is, and Max overbraked himself at one point in time, and mowed the bluegrass in turn 1-2. So yeah, I don't think there was a single driver that didn't have an oh crap moment today.
No, I'd agree with that.
And they were just. Some were better than others, and Sainz was at a bad spot at a bad time.
Yeah.
And then Yuki's was... Props to Yuki for trying to follow the race director's instructions and go to the left of the bollard, unlike K-Mag. Or was it K-Mag or Hulkenberg who just, clearly didn't even try because the grass was wet, which I think it was K-Mag, which fair, the grass is wet, you're not going to make it. But Yuki was trying and then just ended up spinning all over the track. And did you see the replay from the Haas?
Yeah, it was squeaky bum time.
Yeah, I think I texted you when I saw that. It's Kevin now has brown racing overalls. That would have been a red flag for sure. That would have been a nasty crash.
Yeah, that would have been pretty bad. I'm surprised they weren't red flags anyway for a couple of the situations, but I think they had it pretty well under control, so it was okay.
They did. Yeah, I think it was fine because by the time they got the tractor out on track for Logan, they had everybody under the safety car, and that safety car was tiptoeing through that section. So, I was a little okay with it. And it wasn't like Suzuka a couple of years ago where the visibility was just garbage.
Do we want to talk about pitting Lewis to save George?
Yeah, I think that happened. For the second safety car for the Alex Albon Carlos Sainz incident, they pitted George to put George on fresh mediums, and they also pitted Lewis to put him on fresh hards with 11 laps to go. I'm surprised you didn't take a gamble on the soft or just stay out on the medium, and I think the only reason you do that is because you wanted to project George's position over Lewis.
And then George screwed it up. So
kind of.
It didn't work out, but then eventually shook out because George is lucky.
Yeah, but talking about every driver had a moment, it was weird to get Toto on the radio channeling his best Obi-Wan Kenobi impersonation of "Focus, George, focus."
Focus, George, focus.
Yeah, it was definitely Luke going down the trench run at the end of New Hope and use the Force, Luke. Focus, George. Let go, George. His computer's off. George, you switched off your targeting computer. What's wrong?
Is that why he kept binning it I think 3 or 4 times between the chicane twice, and then the not the Wall of Champions wall that everybody puts it into, where he put the wheel in the dirt. It was a mess. He
just needed the Han Solo light driver to come in and take out one of the McLarens from behind him. You're all clear, George. Now let's get this podium and go home.
Yay!
I should go watch Star Wars.
And then George doing his podium interview, looking like he was going to cry. I was just like, really, dude? Do you need to look that upset about a third? I thought you did pretty good on that. The only other question here is, was he actually running for re-election in a parliamentary seat held by his family for 10 years? Because he looked very entitled that he should have got the win there.
Well, we what we didn't mention in our qualifying recap was that when he got his pole position, he got out of the car and did his George as...
crucifixion.
Yeah, George as Jesus pose on top of the car.
That felt so bad. I understand that it's become a bit of a meme, but it doesn't work when you stand on top of the car. It's
you clearly need a wall, 2 walls actually.
Well, exactly. Preferably 4, so we can put him in a box and hide him. Yeah. So I don't like it. George. I think track wise, I think he's got some skills, but he needs to improve it.
You know what? George is just getting persecuted by the Dutch.
Yeah, typical.
Did you ever see the movie Speaking of today on movies Dominic hasn't seen, did you ever see Austin Powers Goldmember?
Yeah, but I don't like the Austin Powers movies.
That's fair enough. But there was one. I just feel like George is channeling his inner Michael Caine in that movie. Of there are two things I hate: people who disrespect other people's countries and cultures, and the Dutch.
And he would say that with a straight face and not meaning it as a joke.
Yeah, exactly. But hey, we at least found a movie you have seen.
I've seen other movies we've discussed. It's just not The Godfather.
Hey, maybe for our off season we should do review Rush with like the actual 76 season.
Quality movie.
It's a great movie. Great movie.
You have one last point here because you added this, and I'll let you speak to it.
That Red Bull is still very fast. It might not like curbs, but it is still very fast.
Man, when Max came on the radio and said suspension locking, I feel like he telegraphed a actual problem that the car has, and I wonder if that's why it ends up like too much bouncing causes the suspension fluid or something in it to like seize up, and it makes it even worse than it was before. I thought that was pretty interesting, but it is fast. But the more I see it, the more I see Perez not successfully drive it, because we didn't talk about Perez, and we should definitely talk about Perez and whatever he did in that car.
The Red Bull is very fast when Max is driving it.
Yes. And there's part of me who questions whether it's actually Max. Like, as much as I've spent much of my Formula One commentating career ragging on Max because he kind of annoys me, you have to admit he's got the skills. Like, he has the receipts, for want of a better term.
Yeah, like after that second safety car, like, and the pit to after the second safety car, or even going on when they went on slicks after the second rain session. I mean, he was pumping in fastest lap after fastest lap for, it must have been 10 to 15 laps in a row. It was insane.
He was having a wonderful Sunday drive.
And I kept, and like the two McLarens and the Mercedes of George Russell right there, and like they were DRSing with each other, and I kept waiting to see one of them pump in a faster lap just for the nature of having DRS. And nope, still Max. Still new fastest lap backs, yeah.
But we know who got the fastest lap overall, though.
It was Lewis.
It was Lewis.
Good job, Lewis. And on the last lap, too.
Yep. I think he was trying to come up on, if he'd had 2 more laps, if only he'd had 2 more laps, he might have got George again.
Or if George didn't have DRS from Lando, because George had
Indeed.
DRS on Lando at the end, and I think that might have been it for Lewis.
It was interesting, there was a post-race interview from Lewis where he said it was his worst race he's ever had, and he in listening to it, he's basically saying he made a lot of mistakes and it was all his fault. But I still don't think I'd have called that his worst race ever. I'm pretty sure I've seen worse races from Lewis.
I don't even think it's his worst race in Canada.
Right, exactly.
Like, 2008 exists.
Yeah.
Which is, I believe, the one where he rear-ended Raikkonen in the pit lane when the...
Yeah.
No, I don't think it's his worst race in Canada.
So, I don't know. I think he's in a funk.
He is. I mean, he's no longer Toto's golden boy, you know.
Should we move on to spicy takes and rumors? Because there's a whole section on this.
Unless you want to talk about Perez at all.
I will say the thing that I thought about Perez that was so bad is the fact that he decided it was a good idea to drive around the track with his car hanging in pieces. Supposedly the pit wall had told him that he should try desperately to get back to the pit lane so they didn't cause a safety car for Max. But at some point that car was dropping bits and it was not safe. And especially when the track was still a little bit damp. I don't know. Feels a bit weird.
Yeah, it's definitely one where Sergio... I don't know if he's just too timid to make overtakes in that car, or he can't. But for a long time in that race, if you think that rain is the great equalizer, and the cream rises to the top in the rain, he was floating at the bottom.
On a significant amount of money per year, immediately after having his contract signed, for apparently no good reason.
In the fastest car on the grid.
In the fastest car on the grid. Speaking of renewing his contract, Horner dropped a bit of a big one in a pre-race interview, saying we re-signed Checo for 1 year. I mean, sorry, a 1+1, which is 2 years. So suspicious. Maybe they'll finally get rid of him.
I still think they took that clause out of his contract if he can't get demoted.
Building on your take the clause out, I think it's a 1+1, where I bet you it is a 1 year extension in the Red Bull, and everything else after that is completely optional. Spicy takes?
Yeah, I think that's everything I want to talk about on the race.
So, spicy takes and rumors. My spicy take, I've got 2 top tier ones. One, Merck have decided to actively sabotage Lewis, and then because they're really mad at him for leaving. and Toto and Lewis have deleted each other from their respective contact lists. There's something weird going on there, and I feel that's what's causing Lewis to be in a funk. It's like, it's not that they're like being really nasty to him, but like they basically, you know, heads down and walk past when they're going down a corridor. It just feels very strange.
You know, there is so much that's happened to Lewis over his Formula One career. It's going to need like a Game of Thrones 7-book series to like encapsulate all the stories and all the beef. Like you need like the McLaren years. You need, that's like volume 1 is in the McLaren. Then you need like the Mercedes dominance era, maybe just to like 2014, 15, and 16, like just get through like the like me and Nico or something.
Yeah,
Nico and I.
Yeah, and then there's the Bottas up until 2020.
Yeah, then
we start the final phase.
Then there's, yeah, I would say, yeah, there was you go all the way to like Abu Dhabi 2021.
Yeah,
that's your cliffhanger. And then this last era of Lewis is the last volume.
Okay. Lewis won't write a book. He's going to release a snapback album, right? Just like Kendrick Lamar and Drake and somebody else who I can't remember is doing at the moment.
Oh, I was thinking he was going to produce his own biopic.
Oh, maybe. But I think he's going to drop the songs. We're going to get the McLaren album, which is going to be like this 12-track banger, and it's going to be amazing, right? And so it's going to be fantastic.
Except for the end when it starts to fall apart and it really is not reliable to get all the way through.
Yeah, it'll peak early, but it'll be so good through it. Like it'll have like strong bones.
Yeah, there'll be good moments towards the end, but really it's not reliable enough to really want to listen to the whole song. But you're like, yeah, that riff was really good.
Yeah, exactly. Then we're going to get the whole Nico years, which will just be like, you know, angry, full of just discussion and just taking pot shots.
Track 7 is I Shouldn't Have Thrown That Hat.
Exactly. And then we're going to get the Bottas years up until 2020, which is going to be this really harmonious. It'll be good, but it'll be missing something. There'll be something in there. It'll be like super overproduced, like really good quality, but yet it won't have the hook for you.
Featuring Sebastian Vettel.
But we're going to get a one-off album for one season, which is 2021, and that's just going to be an absolute banger of an album. It's going to be like it's going to cover the highs and the lows. It's going to be fantastic, and then we'll have to wait for the remaining Mercedes years, which I don't know how he's going to pitch those. I think that just might be an emo type period, and then we'll see what happens when we get Ferrari. Anyway, my second spicy related rumor is also about Lewis, which is as soon as Kimi turns 18 in August this year, aka over the summer break, they're going to kick Lewis out and tell him to get his go bugger off to Italy and bring Kimi in to take his seat to give him half a season of no expectations.
I think that is all very dependent on where that Merc car is in the field, because the upgrade that they brought, the new front wing, seems to actually do well. And if they're able to start pulling points off Ferrari, which they very easily did today, and you know, if they start to move up in the Constructors' Championship standings, I'm not sure they punt Lewis. If there is a clear gap to like, we are stuck here and it's going to take a lot to move up, but we're really not going to be caught, yeah, I think Kimi comes in. I think Kimi could come in.
You see, there's so many thoughts I have about like good or bad or good or bad, because if the car is good and they think that they can continue this into 2025, getting Kimi started in a good car and giving him 5 to 10 races of just no expectations, but in a good car so that he can feel happy about it. I could see myself managing the team that way. But you're also making the terrible mistake that this isn't a track dependent problem for Mercedes.
That's true. But, there's another problem if Kimi comes in. Because I'm thinking of, once upon a time, there was a guy named Mick Schumacher who came in to Formula One, who was a hotshot F2 rookie. And he raced in such a way that he lost his seat because essentially he couldn't, they broke the car. So if Kimi comes in and, takes a little bit to get up to Formula One and breaks the car in multiple races, now you're looking at a back half of the season where you've spent a lot on upgrades and you're going to hit the cost cap. And then you have more problems.
That's a good point. See, there's all these other scenarios. Like, and now as you say that, I'm like, well, if you put him in for the end of the year, there is that risk. But at least you'd know by the end of the year whether you needed to sign Bottas for another year or not, or Ocon, right?
True.
My last point. Okay. I know we talked about Perez a lot, but I think he can't be sustained at this pace. At his current rate of breaking the car breaking the team and losing the Constructors' Championship because McLaren is going to nail that to the wall at the current rate they're going, it's going to look so bad, and it's going to be his fault.
Yeah, I think if Red Bull does not win the Constructors this year, I'm not sure how well that 1+1 deal gets honored.
Exactly. I know there's clauses in that.
There's always a buyout. Like,
yeah. My last spicy comment about Red Bull.
By the way, I did have a comment on your spicy take. 15th is totally sustainable. It's not sustainable for winning the Constructors, but it's totally a sustainable position in Formula One.
It may be a sustainable position, but there is a great question of should it be?
Yeah, I think last year when Sergio was going through his, I've done 6 races, I can't do any more slump. Again, he should just go to WEC. They only do like 6 races. What you got Daytona, Sebring, Le Mans, Nürburgring. That's like 4. That's all they do, right?
Yeah, and they're just like 6 or 7 hours. You just get it done.
There, 5. Yeah, 5 races done. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, like at least last year he was driving through the field and got some points. If you're at the back of the field and either crashing out or not getting points, why are you here?
Along every axis over every time period that Sergio Perez has been in a Red Bull, he has gotten worse. He was pretty good in 2021. He was up there. He could defend and get in the way, and he was pretty reasonable. 2022. He kind of bottled it, right? And just couldn't compete against Max about halfway through the season. But he was kind of still there. Then we get into 2023. Now he's just forgotten how to qualify, but he can come up through the field and kind of make up for it. And now we're in 2024. He can't qualify and he can't come up the field. What's next year? Driving around in the clown car?
It would be interesting to put Danny Rick back in the Red Bull and put Liam in the RB and see where everybody ends up.
As I said in the qualification discussion, they should take the 3 of Yuki, Danny, and Liam and put them through a rotation, leaving Perez in the other V-carb just to give him some stability, to give him a chance where it doesn't really matter, and see which one of those 3 is any good. And if they're all crap, then you can put Perez back in again. My final spicy take, unless you had additional commentary.
No, it's just I think it'd be great if Max, to your point earlier of we need to put Max in a different car to see how good he really is. Leave Perez in the Red Bull, and if Max is able to clinch the World Championship, put Max in the RB, see how good Max really is, and then also now you have everybody gets a target against Sergio.
It's an F1 fever dream, and I know they won't do it, but it would be perfect.
Yeah, we should. What's the game F1 Manager? We should try it there.
Yeah. Okay, my final spicy take. Max is going to quit at the end of 2025, and he's going to do it during his podium interview in Abu Dhabi after he's got his 5th title. Because every time he talks about the new cars, he doesn't like them. Every time he talks about all the other crap that he has to do, he hates it. And on top of that, I think he's kind of getting bored of F1 and he wants to go do something differently. So he's going to get his 5th title, which will make sure he stays in the top, echelons for a very long time, because it's going to take a long time for anybody else to beat that. And he's just going to nope out and enjoy the rest of his life.
I could definitely see that. He is, I think, proven that he is one of the greatest of all time Formula One drivers.
Yeah.
I don't like to crown anybody the greatest of all time because I think that's such a hard comparison across different years, different formulas, different, different engine regulations of you have to use one engine for quality and one engine for the race versus you have to use one engine for a quarter of the season. That's a very different thing. For at least for this generation, he is the best of this generation.
I agree.
Yeah. And yeah, so I don't think he could leave right now and we would still be talking about him for years.
Agree. Exactly. And that's the definition of a GOAT.
Crotty was saying it I forget when, but for the last 75 races, because there's something of this race 75 races since the ground effect cars or something like that. So the last 75 races, Max has won 50 of them.
Yeah, see?
That's great. Insane.
Thanks to Adrian Newey.
And Jos Verstappen. Thank you for leaving Max at a gas station.
Thank you for being a terrible person. Predictions for Spain?
But no, yeah, Spain, I got nothing for Spain. I mean, it's kind of one of my least favorite tracks. Granted, since they removed the chicane in Sector 3, it's gotten better. But I don't know. Something about Spain is just always why do we go here? Why do we do this? It's fine. It's at least a Grand Prix circuit, unlike Monaco, where it's something could happen, but it's also, I don't know. I find the circuit uninspired. I liked the Portugal version better, which was like, hey, this is like Catalina, but has some elevation changes and something kind of fun. Like, I don't know. It's just, it's not my favorite track.
It's a non-race.
I think Max will win. I think McLaren's will probably be the other two on the podium. I think that's about. I think it's going to be I think it'll be a great nap. Yeah, I think if we're going to say what's the next nap on the schedule, I think it's definitely Spain. I think it's going to be a bit of a bore. Is that a prediction? Can we say it's going to be a boring race?
I will take that.
Yeah,
and then we will be sad when we go on for 3 hours because it's such an amazing race next time.
Hey, if that's what happens, I'm not upset. I will predict every race to be a bore if it means we get really good racing.
My predictions are Merck's going to go nowhere.
What is the definition of nowhere?
They're going to be back in 5th and 6th again.
I mean, that's better than they've been.
But no. If you go look back this season, they've edged into 5th and 6th, like pretty predictably.
So that means they're ahead of. So who's 1 through 4? It's I guess Max and then 2 of the McLarens Max, and a Ferrari.
Correct.
Yeah.
Verstappen will win, but only after Norris screws something up in the last 10 laps. After Norris had a completely dominant weekend, like he'll get pole. He'll drive the race, and something will happen in the last 10 laps, and it'll go horribly wrong. Unclear what that thing is.
I can see it.
And then last but not least, my hopeful spicy take, which clearly isn't going to happen. This weekend was so bad for Perez, because I like talking about Perez. Perez is demoted to the V-carb, and Liam is put into the RB, and then Yuki is asked to sit it out.
The only reason I don't like this is because Yuki is asked to sit out.
I know, but Horner loves Danny Rick.
Yeah, but he was also saying today, like, in the conversation you talked about with his 1+1 deal, Perez's 1+1, he's like, well, we got to highlight Yuki as well. He specifically mentioned Yuki in that.
And he will highlight him by showing that he could have opportunity to start a food truck.
Right. I'm just saying, like, my only problem there is Yuki sits out, and I don't think you sit out like the hot hand driver on AlphaTauri. Sorry, Red Bull or V-carb, whatever the hell it is. I mean, if anything, I think you just kick Perez out and you put Liam or Danny or Yuki in the Red Bull seat.
But it's all about the contract, and the contract will be written such that he can't be kicked out of a car. He'll be allowed to be kicked into another car, but he won't be able to be kicked out of a car.
What if he has to serve some sort of team-imposed penalty, and they, after an internal investigation, they have decided that they're going to penalize him by sitting him out for a race?
I like it. Taking a lesson from Alpine.
Yeah, the penalty is being a driver, but we don't have to say that.
Okay. So, we're waiting for your feedback after another exciting Formula One race in a place that begins with the letters M, O, and N. Write into your feedback at feedback@tinfoilhelmets.com and let us know your conspiracies, feedback, and wants. And remember to tell your friends to like, listen, rate, and subscribe on their favourite service, where they listen to podcasts or weird videos on the internet.
Oh, between race drama, I think there's a lot of it. The rigs kind of suck. Where's Newey gonna go? Does so-and-so still have a job? What about quali? What about that?
We are professionals, Andrew. Professionals.
Yeah, not at this.